So I went into Gary's Stickam room last night. It was interesting. Had a bunch of arguments. Some of it was about alcohol. It's just so funny. The United States is basically founded and seems to consist of one third Puritans, one third rebels, and then one third hedonists that go to church with the Puritans on Sunday. And that's the story right there. And of course, there's dangers to alcohol and drugs and all kinds of vices and activities that are risky that people take. But you just want to, just because I believe it should be legal doesn't mean it's okay. Yeah, that is what it means. You know? And my parents have drank, my grandparents drank. You're just Puritans. Well, but that doesn't mean it's not bad. Yeah, it does. And Gary in particular, it's like he says that the source of all objective value is suffering as an anti-value. So if you can alleviate suffering with drinking, then that makes alcohol objectively good, by Gary's definition. People don't want to face, this is what I mean when you guys don't know logic. You make one set of statements and you don't want to follow the logic. Logic is about, you choose a set of principles and you say, I'm bound to those and their results, then you're bound to everything it logically implies. But basically, yeah, I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong. You know, there's a lot of uptight people probably should drink more, and there's probably a lot of these hedonist middle third going to church on Sunday types that need to drink less. Those are the ones that really have problems with it, as far as I could see. People that are just bohemians and don't have hang-ups about it, but know, hey, you got to watch it, or, oh, you can't drink tonight, I got to work tomorrow, that kind of thing. They don't seem to have the problems. It's people that are all inhibited that are like, well, I do it because it's right, but it doesn't mean it's right. I'm a bad person, but I do it because of an addiction, blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, well, of course, everybody that's drunk says that. Well, yeah, that's why they're drinking, because they're telling, and then you bring it up, and they're telling you why they enjoy it. And then I'm like, well, I make sure to stay functional at least. Well, they all say that. They all think they're the life of the party. But I didn't say I was the life of the party. I said I do my work. For example, I have a drink at night. And the kids are asleep. And I have a nightcap. Make videos and look at the internet after I program. The other funny thing is how many times, because I do openly will drink and go along, how many times people are like thinking I'm drunk, and it's just like, no, it's 4 in the morning. I'm just tired. I'm minded. And then it comes across like, oh, you make an excuse. Well, I don't believe in any excuse. I believe you're a bunch of Puritans. I don't need an excuse. I'm not saying it's a good thing. But you just did say it was a good thing. I know. I just can't figure out how it all goes together. The other thing is this Higgs Boson stuff. Gary's funny because he's learned a lot since I've been talking with him about modern physics. But he doesn't like to admit anything till he sort of understands it enough to disagree with you about something else. But he's talking about this idea of, that there's got to be some quanta that's being transferred, and the photons have a lot of quanta in them. And he's a little confused because there's really two meanings of quanta and quantum mechanics, which is, the one is that the photon, for example, itself is a particle. It's quantized. Obviously a particle like an electron has this fundamental quantized character, but it turns out, that thing has a wave nature, and then the waves have this quanta nature. So it's one quanta. Then there's also the quanta, the smallest amount of energy, represented by the Planck constant, and a photon has to have a whole number of those, right? It has to have a whole number of that amount of energy. Okay? So, but anyway, he was talking about, how quantum would have to hit it. Well, this is the idea I was telling with the Higgs boson. See, the bosons are they're like the photons and the force carriers. And in principle, you'd expect, by analogy, for example, in gravity, that there would be a graviton. And when that graviton actually strikes you, that's when you're tugged a little bit in the direction of the gravitational object, right? But they haven't found that. So, that's by analogy. Quantum mechanics is really, it's all about electromagnetics. Okay, and yet it seems to be about more. It seems to that everything's about that because that's chemistry and everything's made of chemistry. But so that's the amazing thing about the Higgs. See, it's a boson. It's one of these force carriers. You know, like if you're pulled by a magnet, then that means some sort of force carrying particle that was discrete and quantized, you know, in quantum theory, had to strike you and cause the result of that. You know, you move at that moment. You're actually struck, and time is apart because it can't go any faster than the speed of light. Like if you have an electromagnet and you turn it on, you know, it takes the speed of light before the effect of that magnetism is going to reach something. Okay. So, so you've got these bosons, these force carriers that do this transfer between the lepton and massive kind of stuff. But the Higgs boson is amazing because it's a boson that does have mass. It explains why energy turns into mass and back. It basically is getting closer to an explanation of why this radiation where mass turns into energy, why that might happen. And those that want quantum mechanics to yield back to a deterministic sort of platform should be all for the discovery of the Higgs boson, because it's a phenomenon occurring in this area where it has this ubiquitous explanation. The Higgs field is everywhere. This is where mass comes from. And it would explain ultimately why stuff goes from mass back into energy and vice versa, right? Also, it's the final, I believe, the final particle that was undiscovered in the standard model. And we're talking about a model that predicted things like antimatter, the positron, and they found that. Right? So they found all of them in the standard model. Now there's a lot of particles in other theories, in the supersymmetry theories and string theories. There's a lot of particles, but I don't think any of those have been discovered. So as far as, let's say, classical quantum mechanics, the standard model, this Higgs boson was the missing piece. They now have a complete set of puzzle pieces. And yeah, I mean, whatever's next, whether it's supersymmetric particles or, you know, some other theory entirely, whatever the unification will eventually be with the things that quantum mechanics doesn't seem to address, it's got to be a good thing to have all of the chess pieces. It's like, well, now we can actually start using quantum mechanics for a while and see how far it goes. You know, we had the chessboard and all the pieces, but the queen, we've been playing chess with no queen, and it's not quite the same. You know, the power of the game is about to be expressed. Could be decades and decades, but I mean, it's a huge, huge step on that. And you spend billions of dollars, and in that room, they just all think, no, it's just a waste. The scientists are doing it just to get a job. Well, how many fucking scientists do you know? No, scientists are super interested, and they have to try to convince other people it's interesting, but they generally are interested in those things. There's other ways to just be a money scammer if that's what you want to do. Now, there's money scammers in science, and they scam for money to do the research in the area they think is neat. I guarantee you the people that developed the Large Hadron Collider really wanted to find this particle, and it really was worth it. And there's a lot of other things you can find from this wonderful device, but to spend all that money to spend 2 years to find this particle, you know, be given another 4 as they clamp down more, but you know, totally worth it. It's just, you might not think so, and you have your opinions. But you know, you use phones and computers, and you know, it's going to yield the kind of benefits that your descendants will be using just as ignorantly as you do, thanklessly. So it's and that's just a technological thing. I mean, the real reason I think it's so awesome is because the knowledge, the conceptions that it's giving us for understanding material reality.
We're gonna go, Dad.
Okay. All right. So yeah, we're gonna go. Turns out my sister's just came to a wedding, so she's back on the island real quick. We're gonna go visit. So yeah, you know, people just think it's a big scam. It's just, yeah, we'll look a little deeper. No, pretty successful scam. Billions of dollars. What for? Just to make this chart. It doesn't mean anything. We can't do anything with it. Yeah, and this is kind of the August 2 thing. It's just that I'm going to change my attitude. Okay? I have been scanning you guys. I mean, I made that video about racism, but the title was not to please you or something. And then in the description, I describe what I'd done, and there 2 different people are like, well, that's random, that description. It's like, no, I describe what I do. I made a racism video. I didn't want to attract the people that are like, I want to talk about the race war. And so this is what I've been doing. I'm scanning you guys. I put Easter eggs all throughout. I have developed a presentation method that also, sort of accidentally puts patterns down so it looks like there's Easter eggs, but that could be apophenia. And then in there I put my Easter egg and I see what people react to, what they respond. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but you make a 5-minute video and somebody replies to you in 15-minute video, say, and then they really only talk about like one thing, like a minute of your video. And I've always been fascinated by how do they choose which minute they're going to pick out. It's very revealing. It's been very revealing asking that question for 30 years. And this is one reason I know what's up. And you could say experience doesn't count, but maybe your experience doesn't. But mine does. So, yeah, I have made videos where I concede. I'm arguing to somebody, and what you do is really harsh, not about it, and then you go, but I do admit you're right about that. And then go on, and they make replies where they respond to the harsh part and don't notice the part where I'm like, oh, but you're right about that. And of course, I want them to bring the part where I'm right about that, because I'm saying, yeah, see, that's what I was saying. You needed a balance. I was balancing you, but, here's bigger picture has balance to it. And the reason I say you guys aren't that bright is because you don't do that well at these tests. But also, and I'm going to make another video about this system, for example, the 5 layers of epistemology and the third person versus first person sense of self. This is an important thing. This is an answer. You all should find that relevant. There's no reason to not be interested means that you would either want to have your own solution, which you don't, none of you do, or not acknowledge that there's problems there, which there are, and it's like gravity. There's problems with your sense of self and your epistemology. I ordered it for you, and you still continue to be confused. I explain why we're in a dream that's a recreation of whatever, however we can model the perception. So if there's an external world giving us those perceptions, then we're modeling it. If it's a computer, then we're modeling it, whatever. It answers all the epistemological questions while maintaining why there's skepticism. There's no way saying that that's not relevant. And you guys just don't get it. Why would I be putting that more and more? I do that very rarely. I have a few like keynote presentations. But I'm going to go back to telling you what reality is now. I'm done scanning you. It's like, that's the thing. This last 6 years has been like, I've been scanning you and then using the results of my scan to inform my opinion, because you guys suck ass and tell them what you really think. But I could scan you and find out, improve my opinion. And as a result, sometimes it's like, I know more what people think than they seem to. Is that arrogant? Right. But when I'm arguing and discussing things with people, often I'm like, but you've forgotten these things you told me. Aren't those, and then I find out, they don't really believe in those. Or yeah, they do believe in those, but they've forgotten this is what's hanging them up. And all these strings that are attached to them. And I'm like talking to them, and if I'm wrong, then how come sometimes I could cut some of the strings? And yeah, well, I just do a little bit of that in the scanning process. But we're going to get back to the to the presentation. We're going to have honest framing, and part of it is I don't have to tolerate the stupid logic and go, oh, isn't that sweet what you think about science? No, sorry, stupid is not okay.